Hey everyone, thank you very much for having us. We're very excited to be here. I am here to tell you that however excited you are about chain signatures, you are not bullish enough. What we are going to be implementing inside Infinex with chain signatures is going to absolutely change crypto. We have an issue at the moment, and we've had an issue for a long time. We're building this amazing technology. We built amazing technology starting from Bitcoin, and yet, very rapidly, from the moment Bitcoin was launched, we've been taken over by databases. And this started like super early on. The first database that was able to kind of take over Bitcoin and control a lot of the on-chain transactions was actually not even built as an exchange. It was built to trade Magic the Gathering cards. That's how dark it is. It's pretty grim. We've had this play out throughout the history of crypto, from Mt. Gox all the way through to Coinbase, Binance, and then eventually FTX, where no matter how good our technology got from a decentralization standpoint, databases were always ahead of us. Centralized platforms were always ahead of us. They've been better. To the point where, like DeFi summer, we had Uniswap. Uniswap was amazing, and we were all doing victory laps because Uniswap on one day was able to compete with the spot volume of Coinbase. One day, right? This is just really problematic. As an industry, we need to be able to build platforms that use the technology to do the things that we want to do. And if all of the transaction volume that's happening inside crypto is happening in people's databases, then something's gone wrong, right? And so we need to fix this. But we haven't been able to fix it for a number of reasons. So I built synthetics. I was building in DeFi early on, and what I learned is that we needed to build for enthusiasts. We didn't have end users, so we had to build things almost from an ideological standpoint, right? If what you were building was not ideologically pure, it would get a little bit of FUD. And if you want to validate that, go and check out some of the Reddit threads about the early Haven days. So we have this problem where we were building things for a group of people that kind of had different incentives to what the average user has, right? They actually wanted things to be hard in some ways. They wanted things to be weird. They wanted to have to do these deep dives into the technology. And they wanted it to be both censorship resistant and decentralized. And the challenge when you need to satisfy both of those two things is that it's very hard to build good UX. Right? And we haven't been able to until, it's basically in the last 3 months, right, that we've had the technology to be able to do this. With chain signatures, we can actually compete with these centralized exchanges, finally, right? There's a whole bunch of other things that have come about, but it's really critical that we have chain signatures, because the problem that we had building DeFi is that we tried to get people to do things the way that we wanted them to do it. So if someone would turn up to DeFi and say, hey, I'm really excited about what you guys are building, how do I use my XRP? We would say, get out of here, right? Like, we don't want XRP, we don't want your bad token. And Cardano, Litecoin, Bitcoin Cash, all of these things, right? Any of the assets that you can think of, we couldn't support them, but we also didn't want to support them. And that's really not going to work. When you look at the top 20 assets by market cap, most of them are these assets that are not smart contract chains, and they have large market caps because they have large adoption. And if we exclude these users, we're not going to be able to bring on the average user that's on Binance or Bybit or Coinbase. And so we've had to basically figure out a way to support all these different assets. And the way that we've been able to do this now is through chain signatures. We have the ability to use chain signatures to enable people to deposit Litecoin. But we have to do it in a way that is both non-custodial and has good UX. And so this is where my friend Jed comes in. Jed and I have known each other for a long time, He's been building in Web 2, and he's got some thoughts about the whole Web 2, Web 3 dichotomy as well, which I'm sure you can talk to him about afterwards. But I realized when we were building Infinex that we were off. Like, we were getting something wrong. The way that we were approaching it was not quite working. And I was like, we actually need to bring some web people in so that we can figure out how to actually build something that will have good UX. And the way that we sort of landed on this was that we needed to build an application, which sounds wild, but I'll hand over to Jed, and this is how we actually build an application in crypto.
So let me introduce Infinex quickly. Like, it's an app. Infinex is on-chain, but Infinex is also, I think, one of the better apps you would find on the internet anywhere. And we've done that not just by building an app in the way that it normally happens in crypto. We've got a platform behind it. We've got a vertically integrated stack that goes all the way from the UI that you interact with, the signing experience, the database, the distributed compute platform underneath that, and eventually the blockchain that all of the operations actually end up happening on. And so when Kain sort of pitched me on Infinex a year ago, he was saying, we've got the technology, I think, to finally solve this problem, but what we need to do is point it at UX instead of just building the functionality that we think people want to come on chain, because we've tried that, we've got it all, and it hasn't really worked. We just don't have the users. So we realized that we had to actually combine both of these strategies. And there's a lot of prior art in Kain's head about what being on-chain means. We spent quite a bit of time sort of working this out and distilling it down to really the core principles that we've built Infinex on top of, and there are three of them. There is, we want users to be self-custodial. We need to be non-custodial for this to work. Otherwise, we haven't moved the needle far enough. With self-custody comes the problems of funds recovery. What happens when someone loses access or control to their private keys? How do we solve that? So that was number two. And number three is everything has to be on-chain, right? We have on-chain transparency under everything you do. And I think that's the biggest one that sets Infinex apart from what the other applications most people are using to interact with crypto, like Binance or all of the other ones are, right? Something like FTX doesn't happen if you have on-chain transparency. So we tried to combine the best of these two approaches together, but it leads to more problems, right? Because the next thing you need to do if you're focusing on UX is solve how do we do genuine across-chain UX, right? And that introduces a hard problem, which is the multiple sources of truth problem. And we spent quite a bit of time this year working around that as well. And some of the stuff that we've shipped already, like the patron sale, is really cool cross-chain user experience. You can farm access to the sale on Base using some assets that you deposit on Arbitrum. You can then use some Sol to buy an NFT on Ethereum, and you don't actually see the chains that you're using really mentioned anywhere in this experience, right? And as we're working through this, we realize this is actually the secret to what the centralized exchanges have done to make it easy as well. They don't mention chains. They just talk about tokens. They talk about what you want to do, not how you need to do it, and definitely not where you need to go in order to do it. Right? So this kind of really, I think, is just the tip of the iceberg of what people are going to want to be able to do on chain without knowing how. And this has brought us to cross-chain signatures, because even in that example, we've only solved a part of the problem. Right? I'm talking about all the DeFi tokens, and as Kain mentioned, we actually need to solve for more than that. We need Bitcoin. And so what we've said is that once you can custody Bitcoin on Infinex, it will be real Bitcoin. And it's cross-chain signatures that will allow us to do that. If we have a look at what custody means, like I said, it's only half the story. You need recovery, right? We can translate a passkey, which is a big part of our UX, into an on-chain signature. But what happens if someone loses it? We need a smart chain underneath the hood that we can actually program with a contract or a program to sort of deal with what happens next. And so NEAR chain signatures actually lets us build the smart contracts and the logic that we need to, whilst also controlling these assets on chains that don't have native support for the functionality that we need. So yeah, this is a huge unlock, and we see chain signatures as the way to get to our vision of what people want to do on chain in a way where they don't really realize it.
So where do we go from here? So we have the technology now to beat Binance. Like, if you think about what the last 15 years has been, it's been this era of crypto happens inside someone's database. And we've done DeFi, and we've kind of made some inroads, but we haven't really been able to crack it. We haven't been able to beat Binance, beat Coinbase. We can't even beat KuCoin, honestly, which is, we can do better than this, right? So what chain signatures allows us to do is to build an experience that is fully on-chain and support any asset, every asset, not just a selection of assets that we want to support, not just SPL tokens, not just ERC20s, but all of the assets. And this is going to usher in a new era. Like, we will be finally doing all of our crypto transactions on-chain. We won't be doing them in someone's database. We won't be giving up custody. We'll be doing it the right way. And it's pretty amazing when you think about the fact that, like, it's taken us this long to get there, but once we do, it's a huge unlock. Because at the moment, if you are in Binance, you have access to some functionality, right? You can do staking, you can do margin trading, you can do perps, but there's a whole bunch of applications that you can't access unless you go on-chain. And right now, the barriers to entry to getting on-chain are just too high, right? And so the question that we've been asking is, how do we improve the onboarding experience? What can we do to get more people on-chain? And one of the things that I think many people in this room would agree with is that it used to be that we would onboard people, right? On-ramping and onboarding are actually different things, right? Like, fiat on-ramps are one thing. How do you get fiat into crypto? But the onboarding of someone into crypto, how do you get someone access to crypto, is challenging, right? And it used to be that we would go around and we would onboard people one by one, manually, right? We would go and set someone up with a Bitcoin wallet or set someone up with an Ether wallet. And we got to a point where we stopped doing it. Because if you do that long enough, eventually you get a phone call 3 years later where they say, those words, I wasn't really supposed to write them down, right? And you're like, people will get wrecked, right? And so what we've figured out is that there is a way for us to onboard people using a platform that is a rich application where you can essentially give someone a link, they can follow that link, you can have already sent crypto to them so that when they open the link and they set up an account, they have a passkey that can sign messages for them, can sign transactions, and they now have crypto in their account. And you've onboarded them without having to go through KYC, fiat on-ramping, et cetera. And now they can start to actually do things inside crypto. They can do on-chain transactions. The problem is that Infinex, as it stands, is still a walled garden. It's a little bit unsatisfying, right? Like, we've replaced Binance with another kind of wrapped thing, right? So how do we break out of that? How do we allow people to access the long tail of exciting stuff that's on-chain? The way that we do that is we let them take their Infinex account and sign into a dApp. And when you let them sign into a dApp, what you can do is take all of the chain abstraction that we built inside of Infinex and actually extend it to the rest of the long tail of crypto applications, which is amazing. Like, as an unlock for DeFi and for on-chain platforms, it's going to make that barrier that right now is too high for the average user to get off of Binance disappear. And then people can just go and use every application. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter if it's a prediction market or if it's lending or if it's some social application or a game. They can get access to anything.
So one of the things we've spent a lot of time talking about is actually the education problem that exists around crypto, right? The things that you need to learn in order to use it, and our goal is to remove the need for that education. If you sign up for Binance, it's just like signing up for online banking, and the more familiar we can make the patterns involved in crypto while still being genuinely non-custodial on-chain behind the scenes, I think the better off we're all going to be. So we've got some plans in that area, but we're also out of time, so we'll leave it there. But thank you for listening and enjoy the rest of the conference.